Hello, this is Live and Thrive, and we are set to thrive in this September, learning social skills that will help us achieve purpose, realize our goals. Last week, we talked about communication. This week, we'll be talking about negotiation. I tell you, you need this skill because you are not an island. You'll be dealing with people. There are things you need towards achieving your purpose that you need to negotiate how to get from people. So I'm here once again with Tony. Tony, you are welcome to Live and Thrive.
Hello there.
Yeah, so I'll start by asking you, as usual, what is negotiation?
Well, negotiation essentially involves two or more parties who will have to come together to reach some sort of goal. And this they can do through compromise or some sort of resolution based on their interests, which could be similar or divergent. So essentially, they're going to reach some sort of compromise or agreement based on that interaction between the two of them. And that interaction is what they call negotiating.
You said a bit about, why we negotiate. Can you tell us more why we need to negotiate? Why do we need to negotiate?
Well, human beings do not exist alone in modern society. What it means is that every time you have a goal to achieve, it often involves another person to provide some of the resources to make you achieve that goal. And in order to get that resource from them, you will need to go into some sort of interaction, which is why you are negotiating with them. So in order for us to succeed in achieving our goals, we negotiate. And one of the things you have to notice, we negotiate every day, almost every day of our lives. It could be to resolve a conflict. It could be to gain some sort of efficiency. Like, for example, you can walk to your office, or you could pay an Uber driver to take you there, which will be more efficient for you. So in getting all this value from other people, you might have to do some sort of negotiating. But I must add, negotiating at times can be a mix of cooperation and competition, which we will talk about in more detail later on.
Wow. So obviously there must be principles that guide the way we negotiate. What should we be looking out for when we negotiate? What are the principles that guide negotiation?
So when you are relating with other people, clearly there must be some rule of engagement for you to enjoy long-term success. So the first thing is to think about the relationship. Is it a one-time interaction you are going to have with this person? Is it going to be long-term? That is very important. If you envisage a long-term relationship, obviously it will affect the way you are going to negotiate. But wherever you find yourself negotiating, it's always a useful tool to build some sort of good relationship with the counterpart. In building that relationship, you may be able to get something that helps you achieve your goal while they are also getting theirs. It's also important for us to communicate, listen actively when we are negotiating. And in coming up with your solution to a negotiation, you have to research. It's always good for you to negotiate with some sort of knowledge of what you are talking about, how it's going to affect you, how it's going to affect the other party in advance, so that when you are coming up with an agreement, it will be something that works well for both of you. Another very important principle when you are negotiating is to consider what I'll call fairness, the golden principle. You see, you have to be aware of your own biases, even the counterparty's biases, and try to build options that allow for your biases so that you can both get out of it. You might be negotiating with somebody that wants higher price and you want quicker delivery. So you can balance between the two in such a way by being creative in your solutions. Then finally, when you are going to negotiate, it's always a nice thing to have what I call a stretch goal, and also to know your walkaway point. You see, a stretch goal is like, this is I would like to have, if it's possible, I can get this. But I will settle for that as my ultimate minimum. Anything below that, I'm not doing the deal. Always a good thing to have such things in advance when you are going in for a negotiation. So essentially, the principles are: you look at your relationships, think about your solution and its fairness, and look at your outcomes in such a way that you have set your own preset walkaway point and your stretch goals.
Thank you so much. My take home: the relationship is very important and the goal you are really trying to achieve. Then, what are the skills that we need to negotiate fairly? You've talked about fairness. So negotiate fairly and towards achieving our set goals.
Well, in order for you to negotiate successfully, you need to first learn how to negotiate. I know you've been doing this for a long time, but if you know the rules of negotiating, you're likely to have better outcomes at the end of the day. So what are those things that you need to know? It's always good to have good communication skills, because if the other party cannot understand what you're saying, then you probably not be able to negotiate effectively. You need to have good planning skills. Luckily, we talked about planning a few weeks back. We've talked about communications as well. There are other social skills you need in order to be able to negotiate. This includes persuasion. You need to be able to get people to understand what you're saying. You need to have an assertiveness, because you might run into a bully and be able to stand your ground when you are dealing with them. You need to have a very good deal of emotional intelligence in order to be able to negotiate well. Then, very good negotiation tactics are also very useful. Some of them include things like who makes the first offer, for example, or ultimatums, or understanding power balance in the relationships, or even the use of delay. Because there are times, by delaying acceptance of an offer, you may be able to negotiate a better outcome than just rushing in to take the deal. So when you now have those skills, it's also good to know the process, because the process is important. If you have a good process, even if you're not very highly skilled and you follow these steps, you'll be able to do well in your negotiating. The first step is to plan. Remember, we talked about planning too. So you plan, what do I need to ask for in this deal? How do I ask for it? How is my counterparty going to receive it? Is it likely to object? If he objects, what sort of counteroffer can I make? So you have to have a good plan. And if it's a very important negotiation, I suggest you do a practice run. You can call some of your colleagues or your friends to act as the counterpart while you practice your techniques to see what works. Then, of course, you go ahead and execute your plan, which is where you now go and engage the counterparts. But when you have done all that, it's important to settle. Once you have reached an agreement, to document it or arrange for how it will be implemented. If you don't do that, you probably don't have a deal. Then, an important step that I also recommend for negotiating skills is to review all your important negotiations. To do like, okay, so when we talked, we did this, they did that, we did this, and see if the outcome was the way you expected it to be. Don't forget that you may also need to get back and say, hey, I forgot to add this particular condition. Could you please allow us an extra so, or whatever it is extra you want in that deal? So those are some of the important ways handling this.
Oh, thank you so much. I've learned quite a lot today. I'm sure everyone watching must have gained a lot of value. And obviously, all the other sessions we have had will be very useful. All the other skills we've talked about, like the skills of planning and communication. So I enjoin us to go back to our previous videos and watch them. I don't know if we have any last words. I think we are practically done, but do you have any last words?
Well, negotiating can be a very highly skilled task. You could be negotiating with a kidnapper, or you could be negotiating with your child on the curfew. So the importance of negotiation matters a lot. So the amount of energy you put in should depend on the importance of that outcome to your overall goals. But before we close, it's important to understand some of the styles in negotiating. You can have a competitive negotiative style, which is you are trying to go for a win at all costs. You could also have a compromising stance, which means you don't want to push it. You're okay with it, whatever they say, and let's just go on with it. All these styles have a time and place where they work. But the best recommended style is the collaborative style, where you're working with the other party to try and develop a solution that works for both of you. It usually enables you to create more options. For example, if you're buying a very expensive item, you could come up with a payment plan that is not a one-time payment that makes it easier for you to get that item, and so many other ways that come with such collaborative thinking. So I also want to add this because it's very important. When you're negotiating, do not think of just that one transaction. Always think long-term, building relationships. So based on that, I would like to quote Paul Getty, who said this: you must never try to make all the money that's in a deal. Let the other fellow make some money too, because if you have a reputation making all the money, you won't have many deals. So think about it. You want to build a successful business and you reduce the number of deals because you want to kill on every deal, your business will fail. And so that principle should always be at the back of your mind. Think collaboratively. I'm not saying you should concede. What I'm saying is, how do we help each other to be the best we can be? So that's it.
Thank you so much. Until we come your way again next week, yes, have a blessed weekend. Bye-bye now.